Hello everyone, Paul with RGS Restorations, and today we're going to talk about why firearm restoration is almost always the proper decision to make when dealing with an antique firearm that doesn't look that great. But there are times when that decision is clearly the wrong approach to take with these firearms. The answer to that is probably not what you've been told and led to believe is correct. All right, let's get into it. So when I am talking about firearm restoration, I am going to specifically mean that we are going to take a firearm, completely strip it, and refinish the whole thing and make it look as good as possible for that gun. Sometimes they can be made to look like they left the factory, and sometimes maybe not, depending on the amount of damage. But for the most part, we're going to talk about a complete restoration with this. Rebluing is another animal, and we'll talk about that on a different video. So what basically are the reasons people would want to have a firearm restored? I answer calls all day about this, and it's quite amazing what some people's thoughts are on it and why they want to have it done, or why they might want certain aspects of it done and not other aspects. It's quite interesting. And going online, I never watched any videos before I decided to make a video on this. And the only reason I did that, I was talking with a friend and he was telling me some things that he saw. So I went on YouTube and I was watching some videos, and it's amazing how many videos are, or how many people are still advising that restoration is bad, and restoration, you should never restore an old firearm. And in my opinion, that's just completely not correct on many levels. So we're going to talk about why that pertains to older firearms and how it pertains to older firearms. And we're going to cover the certain aspects of why you would and you would not want to do it. So one of the first things that always comes up in a discussion of should you restore a firearm or shouldn't you restore a firearm is destroying its value. And now, my experience is most of the time when we receive calls about restoring a firearm, it's never a gun that is a collector grade gun as it is. There's always reasons why they're calling us. It could be bad barrels, bad wood, a lot of rust and pitting. Just, it is not in good shape. Maybe it's not functioning along with all those other problems. There's always a reason. We're not getting calls, well, at least I'm not, on quality, firearms that are great collector condition. There's always a reason why someone wants to have something restored. So when it comes to the value and why people always say, oh, you'll destroy the value in it, I think what they're talking about maybe is taking a firearm that is considered like a collector grade gun as it sits, and then comparing a restored gun to the same level as a really nice original. Yeah, the restored gun may or may not bring as much as the original. I've seen instances where we've done guns and they actually are worth more than the a quality original due to the work that we did to it and what was done to it. But if you're dealing with a firearm that needs restoration, it is in poor shape, you're always going to increase the value over what it's starting at, its initial point. You will increase that value and you will bring that value level up. Now, again, going back into that, I think a lot of people are confused in that, they think because if you have the value of the gun to start with, and then you put on top of it the cost of the restoration, it's not going to be greater than or equal to what you could sell it for. Well, that's true in most cases, but what in life are you going to invest the kind of money in on a restoration and be able to sell it and turn a profit on it? If you're trying to turn a profit on a restoration, you're going down the wrong path. That's generally not going to happen. You'll pay the right amount of money at a quality shop for a good restoration. It's probably going to be worth, in all reality, about what the gun is worth. So the money that you put into the restoration is probably going to roughly equal what the value of the gun is. And that's just kind of been my case throughout the years in working with firearms. So if you want to get into it with the mind point that, you know, you're going to have an old gun, you're going to have it restored, and then you're going to be able to sell it for a profit, almost that's not generally the case. I'm not going to say that's always the case, but in most times it's not. So, you know, that's just kind of a rough thing on value. The other thing that always comes up is, you know, patina. You know, removing patina from a firearm is always another reason to not have a firearm restored. Patina is one of those words that's often thrown around out there. Well, exactly what is patina? Patina is, and I'm just going to take this Winchester as an example, and we'll get a shot on the receiver. This is a good firearm, in my opinion, that is right on the line, and I have a couple of them out here to use as demonstrations as to whether one might or might not want to restore it. This, and I'll go over each one of them, but this gun could very easily fall on either side, pro or con, as to why you would want to restore it. Some of the reasons to restore it, we'll get back to the patina. You can see that the finish on here is pretty brown. It's not consistent. It's brown. It's fading out. It's got white edges on it, which is all to be expected for a firearm of this vintage. It is in good shape other than that, but the barrel as well has got spots on it, and there's a little bit of pitting on the receiver here. I'm sure the camera should be able to pick it up, but there's a little bit of rust and some pitting on it. But the other problem with this firearm is, you know, the wood's got some big dings in it. There's no chips, there's no splinters. The butt plate is in really good shape. But, you know, the wood isn't that great. So this gun would be a really good candidate for a restoration. It wouldn't require a whole lot of labor to make it look perfect. It's not ever been restored once before, so all the edges are still as they left the factory. The markings are all good, and those are all things that lead to an easy, I hate to say the word easy, but an easier restoration where we don't have to get an engraver involved. We don't have to replace parts or components, butt stocks, recoil pads or butt plates and all that. The markings are all good. So this basically comes down to just metal finishing, some wood refinishing, and putting the blue on it, and it would be a nice project for that. Some of the reasons to not restore this gun is, one, it's in pretty good shape. Yes, the finish is a little bit brown, but that's to be expected. There are some bruises in the wood and all that, again, to be expected with a gun that's had, you know, natural handling and use over the years. It's a very good representation of what one of these rifles would be. It hasn't been messed with. The screws aren't boogered up on it and all that. And it has a good bore. And we're going to come back to bore condition and barrel condition as we talk about this. But this would be a good gun that a person would either leave it be as it is and be happy with it, or have it refinished. And a lot of that it's going to come down to, and that's going to be a revolving theme that I'm going to get into. A lot of it comes down to just what the person wants. You know, what do they want when it's all said and done? Some people are, I'm going to use automobile references an awful lot in this. Some people are okay with a dent in their door, and other people couldn't stand it. It'd drive them nuts. Same thing with metal finishes. Some people are okay with imperfections in the finish, and some people not so much. They want it to look perfect. So another example to have a firearm refinished is, let me grab this one here, this Colt 1911. Now this is also a great example of a firearm that is a prime candidate for restoration. The firearm is solid. The lines are good on it yet. The markings are pretty good. The Colt here, the pony is pretty weak. That's going to need to be replaced, but that's not a big deal. And maybe some of the markings here might need to be replaced. Again, not a big deal. Federal Eagles and proof marks, inspector's marks, those things are usually pretty light. They'll need to be replaced. But other than that, like the serial numbers and most of the markings on here are great. So it's going to require minimal lettering restoration. The grips are not that great. But what makes this really prime for restoration is it hasn't been restored before. It hasn't been messed with. This is just a nice example of one that's fairly worn out. Now, what you're not seeing there is there are some pretty good rust pits in the slide of this gun. There's some pretty heavy, corrosion and pitting that's going on the frame and in the receiver and the mainspring housing and all that. So this firearm is a great example of why you would want one restored. And we do a lot of 1911s, and they are a lot in this very same condition. This one's going to get just completely, the markings are all going to be great. The Carbonia blued finish on it, and we'll replace the grips rather than repair these grips because there's a splinter out of one side, and it'll just work out easier to put some new walnut grips on it. But there's an example of a gun that's in really good shape as to why you would want to have it done. And in doing that, for this, we're going to respring it because the customer's probably going to want to shoot it. So whenever we get into these old firearms and they haven't been used and people want them refinished and they want to start using them, I almost always recommend respringing. It makes a big difference on, why would you want to use 100-year-old springs or close to it in these old guns? So a side note, respring them. A little bit of a note on a gun that you would not want to restore would be this Luger. This Luger is in very good shape. It's not 100%, 95% awesome, but it's close to it. It has very good finish. All the markings are great. The grips are great. There's a little bit of stuff going on with it, a little patina on certain parts on the grip, from handling. But overall, this is a very good example of why you'd want to leave this one alone. There's really nothing that would be gained in refinishing this. Could it be refinished? Absolutely. Are you going to gain a whole lot? Not really. Now, that being said, we're not getting firearms like this coming in for restoration. It's usually something like this would be bad grips, rust pits, the markings are horrible, the bore could be really bad in it. That's the kind of stuff we're getting. So I just kind of want to go over a lot of information that you see online is this very canned approach on, you never want to have a firearm refinish. And I just never agree with that. Almost anything that you get into is, would you ever not have a car refinish if you had an old 57 Chevy that was in pretty nice shape? With, you would put new brakes on it, go through it, maybe it needs a new radiator, whatever. You're going to go through it, replace what needs to be replaced, repair what needs to be repaired. If it needs a paint job, repaint it. You're going to drive around in a car with springs poking through the seat. No, you're going to have it reupholstered. So this attachment to firearms and never being restored, when so many examples of mechanical toys, quote unquote, that guys have are always restored and used to improve your enjoyment of them. And that's why people have stuff restored almost, is to be able to keep using it, continue using it, and continue enjoying it and improving its value so that they can hand it down to family members or what have you, so they can continue to enjoy it as well, especially in like family heirloom stuff. So many of our jobs are from firearms that have been in the family and handed down generation after generation. And it's really that's a cool part of what we do, is being able to, give them back a firearm that's been completely redone, and they just, they can't believe what they're looking at when it's done. That kind of gives you a decent feeling that you gave somebody something that they're really happy with. So I always like that part of it. It's, continuing on to that, we'll use this Winchester here as another example of why you would want to restore it. So many of these older rifles like this, especially, and handguns as well, like with Colt single action armies and all that, the barrels in them are just decimated from the years of black powder and corrosive priming. These things usually have awful barrels, and a lot of them are in calibers that aren't that great, 38-56, 40-82. It's really hard to get, you know, the ammo for it unless you're a hand loader. And a lot of people aren't always hand loaders. So taking something like this and converting it to a 45-70 or a 40-65 or a cartridge that is easily, you know, ammo is easily obtainable for, is always a good option on it, along with the refinishing. So a lot of times refinishings definitely do come along with barrel conversions and stock replacement. You know, a lot of times, you know, the fore ends will be all split. The stocks will have cracks, especially up in the wrist and all that. They're just not really going to be in good shape. So those are just, you know, some more reasons as to what causes or what are some of the causes for a good refinishing and why you would want to have it done. And again, with just one more example of a firearm that probably really would not benefit from any kind of a restoration would be something like this Sharps. It's in pretty good shape. It's definitely brown. The stock has got some dings in it. All of these things, again, are quite normal for this rifle, but this one has a great bore in it. It has an original barrel that has a really good bore. I shoot this one actually quite regularly, and it's a good shooter. I just have no plans on ever restoring it. There's just no need. Everything works well with it, along with, you know, the dings in it. That being said, I do have a lot of single shots that I have restored, you know, and did perform barrel conversions on it. So many of them are in bad shape. So barrels are a big thing on older firearms as to why you would want to have the barrels replaced, and kind of just dovetails into getting into, you know, the metal finishing all at the same time with it. But again, not every firearm needs to be restored, but I don't buy the idea and the basic canned answer that you're destroying the value in it. A good restoration by somebody who knows what they're doing is always going to increase the value over what you started with. Is it going to be worth more than an original Survivor in great shape? Maybe, maybe not. But that really doesn't matter, because what the person is buying is, it's their gun and they want what they want. And if it comes down to putting money into something that's not worth it, there's a lot of examples we could go down on that with cars, boats, airplanes, you name it. There's so many things a guy can have where you just lose a lot of money. Ex-wives, ugh, that was a money hole. So anyway, you know, these are firearms that are meant to be enjoyed, and I like using them. I like shooting them. So I want them to all have good barrels, and most of the time I'm going to refinish them. And I think most people are along those lines. So when you're watching videos of the pros and cons on restoration and why you should or why you maybe shouldn't do it, just, you know, keep it in mind that I've really have never had anybody come to me with a really great gun and want it restored that just doesn't need it. They usually always need a restoration. So that's my ramblings on this whole thing. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you have comments on whether you think a firearm should be restored or not, leave them below and we'll talk about it and we'll see what comes out of it. All right. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.